Hello everybody and welcome to this playthrough for Pro and Expert Division with various wind here for the Southern Pines 9-hole cup. A full 9 with the Southern Pines with the new hole location. We have this once before, which was in the Legends 9-hole cup. The only thing that is different is that hole number 7, you can't get an impossible pot anymore, which is a big plus. But it's still a tough pot if you get down there. You're gonna see that in the video, obviously. So make sure to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video. Also subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. For those of you that do want to have our guides, best guides on the market for tour play and tournament play, scan the QR code or go to patreon.com/golf-tommy. That is in the description down below with a link, so to speak. Follow the info box on the right hand side for the club distance adjustment, elevation adjustment, also what ball and club type I suggest you to play with. Have in mind that those are all suggestions and you don't have to follow it if you don't want to, but there is always a plan behind it. So let's go to hole number 1. Hole number 1. Now we do have the best possible wind here, and sure, we could play with a berserk and just smash the ball down there, but I don't really think that's the best way to consistently get ourselves a chance for a drop. So I'm gonna use as much topspin that I possibly can, and here I would definitely suggest that with any driver you may possess. And obviously the Apocalypse 7 here is a big boy driver, but once again, we do want to have the ball roll as far down possible. I'm doing an adjustment of max plus 10, then I'm pushing up just slightly. The idea here is to have the ball to bounce in between the two bunkers, so I don't want to push up too far. I rather make sure to push up less, and I give myself a slower needle and making sure I hit perfect. Because from here now, as you can see that the pin stands more right than before, it gives us, I would say it gives us a very similar chance to what we had before, because before it stand more center of the green and it was still open. We didn't really have any bunkering in play. The only thing that we might need to do now is use maybe a little bit more backspin than before, because it's a little bit shorter from the rough towards the pin, but shouldn't really be that much big of a difference. Now when it comes to tailwind here, and we should be trying to avoid 12-1. Unfortunately, I do play with a 12-1 here, which is the reason why I miss the right side of the cup. 15% elevation and true club distance is what I'm looking for. And once again, unfortunately, I missed this one just right. But with this type of wind, and we have a long iron, I would say that this is actually very poor. This is with a perfect ball, or this should with a perfect ball become a drop in my opinion. Otherwise, you will definitely lose out on many others that are fighting at the top of the tournament. But in the end, hole number 1, to summarize that one, in tailwind and crosswind, we are able to play the play that I showed you there. If having headwind, you cannot drive over the bunker completely, then I would recommend to just play down the left completely and just secure the birdie. Because unfortunately, this is one of those holes where if you do have a headwind, it's somewhat going to be a birdie and run. And that kind of that's stinky when it comes to a par 4, but that's just how it's going to be. Hole 1 for y'all. Good chance if the wind is correct from tee. For hole number 2, now they have moved the hole more right, which means that using the slope on the green is not as good as it were before, at least not in my opinion. So I'm going for a rough bump. I'm using 3.8 backspin to just start at aiming at the hole. And as the wind now is in a weird position with a slight tailwind, it forces me to use an extra right spin here after I've set up my position to offset on the right side of the pin. And the reason I have to offset here is because I need less adjustment on my shot. But as I do have a tailwind, which is forcing the ball to fly longer than I want, I'm going to have to do an offset or I will miss the rough if I'm adjusting less. So it's kind of like in an in-between scenario here, which I don't really like, but it gets myself into what can I say? It gets myself into a very nice situation when it comes to doing the rough bump when I do an offset compared to not doing an offset. Bounces and get myself right at pin for a beautiful hole-in-one. And for those of you that paid attention to that, yes, I used some right curl, and you may wonder why. It's because I played this hole a lot in general practice and I had this wind every single time. Like literally no other wind to practice on. So in the end, I started to have different wind angles, and I almost play that as I do in the guide with different type of wind angles and stuff like that. And I ended up using this as a replay. So the right curl was just a wind angle tweak based on not having as much crossspin I had the other times. I just want to explain that so you don't think it was something weird with my shot there. However though, the rough bump is the focus that we should have. Doing a rough bump here gives us a much better chance for an hole-in-one than what I do believe the slope is going to do now. But if you're interested in only a safe birdie with an outside chance for an hole-in-one, then use the slope and bounce on the fairway on the left. At least then you won't risk anything and you will get yourself a birdie. Hole number 3 will be very long, and that it has always been when it comes to the Southern Pines. And the goal here now is to get the ball to get as far down the fairway, obviously without rolling into the rough there at the top. I'm using a power 5 ball, not so much for the drive really when we do have tailwind, but most especially for the second shot, because having a power 5 ball will actually, with a new hole location, allow us to attack the pin in a much better way. And I think that's going to be very fun for those that has been thinking this hole to be super boring before, like myself, because you know, having the pin stand just after the center of the bunker before was not really fun. But now, standing there on the left, it definitely allows us to attack the pin in a better way. Max plus 10 of the drive, and obviously the overpower will depend on what club you have and what wind strength you have, and also, you know, what ball you're using. Second shot, you can see that I'm having the Cataclysm, but here I should have picked the sniper. I actually had a good drive. I do have a power 5 ball. I do have a tailwind, and now I would benefit big time from using a sniper instead. You can see here that there is a little funnel there. At least that's how it looks to me. And I'm trying to play this one 10% through club distance, but what I do forget is obviously the wind push. When I'm playing such a long shot here, the ball will be pushed a lot after it hits the ground the first time, or like from the first to the second bounce. And that's obviously the difficult part with a shot like this, bouncing on a non-flat area up to a green that is not flat, and then that's going to be difficult to control. But as you can see with the new hole locations, the bunker is not in play as much as it were before, and that's something that is very beneficial for attacking for an albatross. And even though you would miss the albatross, which you will do most of the time, then it's still going to be a super safe eagle. And in the end, that will be the general score on this one, where an albatross will be considered a massive bonus. Hole number 5 starts off as normal. We either play on the left side or we play on the right side. It depends on what you prefer to do. When the wind is left-right here, I definitely prefer the left-hand side. And the reason for that is that playing on the right-hand side with a left-to-right wind, it's going to push you having to adjust down into the sand on the second shot. And that's something that I would like to avoid to any cost. So left-hand side, max plus 10. I'm playing with 3.5 bar topspin and max right side spin. And here I'm actually not pushing for a long iron, I'm pushing for a wood club. And the reason for that is that I do believe it's easier to adjust less rings on the second shot. So playing a wood club from, you know, minimum distance up to medium distance is going to be better than having to play a grizzly from max distance, which would unfortunately require us to pull 2 times many of the times. Second shot now. Okay, so we're going to play with a sniper. Look at the new hole location here. It's positioned more left, which means that we would benefit a lot from using a good amount of left spin, especially when the wind is left to right, because we are going to adjust down into the sand. And if we would be aiming with less side spin, we would have to position us closer to the sand, and then obviously we will start endangering hitting a great left or something like that, and maybe ending up into the bunker. So I'm aiming close to the rough line here with 2.5 left spin, 1.5 back spin, and aiming left of the pin. And when you see here, I'm dropping down into the sand, means that I go from a higher to a lower point, and therefore I will lose distance. I'm compensating for that by using a little bit of overpower in this instance. So even if I'm aiming very close to the rough line and I'm using a little bit of overpower, you can see here that on my first bounce, you see there, I still have more room when it comes to bouncing than where I aimed. I'm actually aimed closer to the rough line where my first bounce ended up with. And that's why, once again, we are dropping down from a higher to a lower point, and in the game, and how the game works is that we will lose distance. So therefore I'm compensating by using the overpower, and we're getting this one to drop nicely. But once again, when it comes to shots like this, the spins will vary depending on what type of wind direction you have on the second shot, and obviously the position will vary too. Because if I would be having a right to left wind, I wouldn't have offsetted the ball guideline on the left side of the pin. Then I would be aiming at the pin, or maybe even offsetted right of the pin if that would be something that would be necessary. So stuff like that is very important that you have in mind. Hole 5 has gone from being my worst par 3 of the Southern Pines to be my best, because now there is an absolute massive funnel. It isn't really demonstrated as well here in this video, but for those of you that do want to take a little closer look at that, go and watch the rookie playthrough in Hole 5. You can see me wiggling around, and it's literally a massive funnel. So I'm using one top spin, two right spin. Obviously the spin will vary depending on what wind direction you have, but the idea should be the same, which is bounce into the rough, roll past the pin on the right side, take the slope back into the hole. And trust me, look at this in practice or just in real play or whatever, and you will notice such a massive funnel that I truly didn't think was existing on this hole. And it gets up there and it takes the slope and it falls down, and it's an extremely good chance for an hole-in-one. In this wind, I do play max plus 10. However, though, the adjustment will obviously vary depending on what wind angle you have. And yeah, depending on what wind angle you have, because it's not going to be the same every single time. And as I said, the spins will vary too. You can't use one top spin, two right spin all the time. You need to compensate differently if you have a tailwind compared to a headwind, compared to a crosswind. But to summarize once again, this has become a really fun hole, because playing into a massive funnel is always going to be fun. So hole number 5 for y'all, good chance for an hole-in-one. Take your game to the next level with our ultimate tournament text guides for the Southern Pines Golf Club 9-hole cup. You can find the link in the description down below to Patreon, and also we do have the QR code here on the screen. The link is patreon.com/golfclashtommy. We are providing a qualifying round guide and a final round guide for expert and master division to help you be competitive in this tournament without having to spend loads of time in practice and then loads of balls, which essentially is a cost for you as a player. But that's not it. We do have something for each and every one. Starting at $1.50 per month, you can find a package that suits you and what you want to improve with in this game. Tour play, tournament play, you name it. Check it out through the QR code here on the screen, or patreon.com/golfclashtommy. You get to the page with all the packages, find something for you, and then start doing what more than 2,000 players has already done this month to improve their game in Golf Clash. Hole number 6 shall always be some sort of a power slice, and the reason for that is that if we do not do a power slice, we have no chance of getting anything better than an eagle. So, and that's not really why I'm doing this playthrough. I don't want you just to have the super safe way. I want you to see a way of actually having a chance for an albatross. So with this type of wind, I'm using a ball with wind resistance 4, because otherwise I will most likely clip the rough with my first bounce if the wind isn't low enough with a kingmaker. You can see there that I'm using 4.5 bar top spin and 3 left spin, and the 3 left spin is to put myself in a position that I can actually shoot in between the two three parts, or whatever we can call it. I can't find the word in English just because of that, but I do want to shoot in between the trees. If I would be having a tailwind or a crosswind, I would be pushing my ball to be as far down the right side of the fairway possible, to have an open shot with my short iron or a long iron towards the pin. But unfortunately I didn't get that wind a single time in practice. I only got this wind that I had there on like 11 or 12 tries. Then after that I gave up, and then I'm just focusing on this one instead. Now you can see I'm close to minimum distance. I would recommend to do rings from min here and use that with 20% elevation. And when it is a headwind like this, it's very important that the ball guideline goes heavily through the hole, because the ball guideline will be compressed. and the ball will not roll as long as the ball guideline is showing here on the screen. And that is something that I unfortunately get to experience in the worst possible way here with a perfect ball. So rings from min with 20% elevation is what I'm using here. I'm centering the ball, I'm hitting perfect, and you can see that I'm dead on line and it looks good. I'm counting in the albatross, but unfortunately you can see that I'm rolling just short in line. And that's probably the worst thing that can happen, because you have done everything right, besides obviously not having the ball guideline through the hole enough. So either to move up a little bit or to use less backspin. Once again, to just summarize here, if having a headwind, then the suggestion is to do a power slice, to position yourself up to where we were there, using an apocalypse, because you will need the power. If you do have a crosswind, you can play with a rock, or you use the apocalypse and try to push the ball as far down the right possible. If we do have a tailwind, even the quarterback will be a possibility, and the rock obviously, but also the apocalypse, and try to push yourself way down the right side, have an open shot with your short iron or a long iron, keep the same elevation, 20%, and then you have a good chance from there. Hole 6, tough par 5, where the drive is everything. Doing the drive correct will result into a very good chance for an albatross. For hole number 7 here from second tee, here I'm playing with a standard kingmaker, and we do want to use the left hand side here when we do have some headwind and crosswind. I would say that in a tailwind we can use the right hand side. However though, the tailwind needs to be pretty strong if we're going to manage to get over all the water, and it's most definitely not going to work if we do have a wind direction like this. Adjust max plus 10, and then we're going to go half a ball of right curl with a circle drop overpower. Have in mind though that even though I play with a high level club, I'm still playing with stats that are possible to use if we are playing with even down to apocalypse level 3. So we roll down the fairway, and now we're going to position ourselves. My thought was that we're gonna be for a long iron minimum distance, but we ended up to be in max distance kind of with our short iron. And here obviously the thorn is a preferred option for many. I don't have the thorn in this bag, but it's still the same type of idea of play. 3 right spin, this to allow us to avoid falling down to the left of the green, because if you do that, it's not going to be an impossible putt, because they've remade this green so you can still reach with your putter, but it's going to be a very overpowered putt, and that's going to be an easy one to miss. So the technique here is to use a lot of right spin, so once the ball enters the green, the side spin helps pushing the ball right, which will then avoid falling down much to the left. 15% elevation, true club distance. We are hitting perfect. You see it bounces on the fairway up towards the green and dropping dead center for a beautiful eagle here on hole number 7. When it comes to hole number 8, they have moved the hole to be closer towards the beginning of the green, and that is actually perfect. And the reason for that is now we can use the slope on the left of the green in a much better way. And the reason it's much better is because before, when the pins and the hole was further back, the slope did curve off before we could get the ball to the hole, which means that we had to attack the pin with a lot of speed. But now we can actually, in a controlled way, use the slope, and we always get ourselves to the pin with a good speed. I'm using medium distance plus 10. I'm using a little bit of overpower to compensate for falling down into the bunker. You can see I'm getting up there on the slope, and speed is perfect. I'm just a little bit too much overpower. And again, I think this is a much nicer way to play this hole. It doesn't force us to have to play with a backspin club on green. Obviously you can still do that as well, but I do think that this play, bouncing on the left, is definitely superior going directly on the green. For those of you that do have more side spin, meaning a side spin 4 ball or side spin 5 ball, can move even further away from the bunkers and play the same shot, but you will obviously play the same shot with less risk. Hole number 8 has become much easier in my opinion, even though it's still going to be kind of a tough one. Hole number 9, especially in headwind, is going to be a very difficult par 5 to manage an eagle at, because to be able to get an eagle, we need to get over the bunker. So that's what I'm trying to do with a power 5 ball. Using a power 5 ball with more wind resistance will be very helpful. And now I am a little bit unlucky not to clear the rough, but I will bounce into the rough and roll out, which gives me somewhat a way of getting kind of close towards the pin. Again, in headwind, most especially, a power 5 ball is required. I would say in whatever wind you're having off tee, a power 5 ball is something that I would choose, because it will not just help on the drive, it will also help on the second shot, because we do have a lot of distance left to be covered, even though with the new hole location being more right compared to before, meaning that we do not really have the rough in the way. So the pin and the hole location is definitely easier now than before. So the albatrosses, especially if we do have some sort of a tailwind off tee, is going to be much more achievable. But it's still going to be a very difficult one, as we are going to have to play with a wood club from absolute max. Here, for the second shot, I play no elevation, and that could vary depending on what wind angle I have and stuff like that. So it's something to just have in mind, that it will change depending on what wind angle you have. You have to compensate for the wind push and stuff like that. Using a wood club with as much topspin possible, and trying to get around the trees here now, especially when I was falling short. And that was a difficult part for me here, that to try to get around the trees and to still not curl this ball into the rough, and also get as close to the green possible. Getting here now leaves us a wedge, alright? But before we take a look at that one, to say about the second shot, if you do not clip the rough, then you won't be having the trees in the way, and then it will be a much more easier second shot to go with. If you can reach far enough, you can use the sniper in the second shot, otherwise you will use the cataclysm or the big dog to make sure you do have the power. Let's change around a little bit here and add the Endbringer as a wedge. Where do we have an Endbringer? There we do have that one. And then we're going to change here to be 20% elevation instead. In the video, you will notice that I'm playing as my base. I play plus 25% elevation, which is the reason to why I miss the wedge. Yeah, it's a bad wedge shot. But you can see here now that obviously we do the normal EB School way. I'm a little bit short, so I decide to still give myself a go with the wedge. You can also go for a dunk here if you would like, but I think the wedge is the best decision in this type of scenario. You can also see here now that that I'm trying in my best here now to pull straight, and I should have used 20% elevation as base. Using 25% elevation as base were not good, and I think I played this one max plus 35, which was clearly over adjusted in this instance. So bad wedge, but in the end, in headwind, this hole is going to be tough to get an eagle, but in tailwind or crosswind of tee, it's going to be a simple eagle with an outside chance for an albatross. Thank you so much everybody for watching this playthrough for Pro and Expert Division with various wind here for the Southern Pines Golf Club 9-hole Cup in Golf Clash, the game. Make sure to comment in the comment section below if you do have any questions, and make sure to hit the thumbs up before you go as well. Guides on patreon.com/golfclashtommy through the QR code or through the link in the description down below. Thank you once again for watching. Good luck in your Golf Clash game.